think everybody pretty much knows what the story is here. This is, you know, not to exaggerate, but this is the big one. And I'm just going to talk about this frame, give you some perspective, meteorological perspective. Rather.
When Andrew made landfall in Florida, it was a Category 4 hurricane on the Saffir-Simpson scale. That's about the same strength as Hugo when it hit South Carolina in 1989. Winds in excess of 140 miles per hour, barometric pressures in the low 930s. Andrew covered less area than Hugo, but size is not always a measure of strength.
As far as intensity goes, the eye was so tight and the pressure was so low and the pressure was dropping so quick. It seems to have done what Gilbert did. The eye there was too much energy around the center of the storm, and so the tight eye collapsed, and now it's forming more of an outer eye.
Andrew was the most expensive natural disaster in U.S. history, 4 or 5 times as costly as Hugo. But was this the big one? Was this as bad as a hurricane can get? To the south of the landfall zone are the Florida Keys, far more vulnerable to storm surge and much harder to evacuate. Or if the storm had struck a few miles to the north, it would have hit downtown Miami or Fort Lauderdale, areas even more heavily populated than South Dade County. As bad as any hurricane may be, it always seems the next one could be worse.
Well, as far as the power or strength of the hurricane is concerned, we would have to rate that up among the top 4 or 5 hurricanes that have hit the United States, certainly this century. In fact, we've only had 2 hurricanes that ever hit the U.S. that we would say might have been stronger. One of those was the Keys hurricane of 1935, the Labor Day hurricane, and the other one, Hurricane Camille, that hit up in Mississippi back in 1969.
Several days after Andrew made landfall, I asked John Hope to reflect on this monumental hurricane and share his thoughts with us. When Andrew went into Louisiana, it had almost the same intensity as in Florida, yet, at least in terms of dollars, Florida's damage was 20 to 30 times that in Louisiana. What made the difference?
There were several factors. One factor was that Hurricane Andrew, when it came into Florida, was coming at a fairly rapid rate of speed, about 17 or 18 miles an hour. It was increasing a little bit when it got to Florida. It moved in very fast, right over populated areas to begin with, before it had a chance to weaken. Well, when it went across Florida then and went into the Gulf of Mexico and headed up toward Louisiana, just before the eye of the hurricane got to the coast, it began to slow down. It had been moving about 18 miles an hour or so, and slowed down to 7 or 8 or maybe even slower. And not only that, the eye tended to start to move parallel to the coast. Now, for a number of hours, the eye was half on the coast and half off. And what this did, it allowed the hurricane to expend quite a lot of its energy over the unpopulated marshland in Louisiana before it finally turned north and at a slow rate of speed and moved up into the populated area.
Do you think building standards played a role in the damage in Florida?
I can't help but think that they did. This is going to require quite a lot of investigation. I believe, and my engineering friends tell me, that you can really stress a house to withstand hurricane-force winds. There's a very good building code in South Florida, and if that is adhered to strictly, I don't think that you'll see massive destruction of houses. And also, I think it's very important in the rebuilding process to make sure that the buildings that are replaced are built according to the code, and the code is rigidly enforced.
Given this hurricane's strength, there were certainly not as many deaths as there might have been. How would you account for that?
Again, I would have to say that the evacuations played a tremendous role. Remember that the evacuations were the greatest in U.S. history. We were able to get people out of harm's way that were on the beach, who were going to be affected by the storm surge, so we had no deaths on that account. And then what we did have were deaths, unfortunately, from the wind itself. And I think that the figures that we've seen so far are pretty much in line with what we would expect with the kind of devastation that we saw. And the fact that people knew the hurricane was coming, there were good warnings out for a good long time. This hurricane didn't surprise anybody, and they knew also that it was going to be a powerful hurricane.
With our technology today, do you think death tolls in the hundreds and even in the thousands is a thing of the past?
We hope that's a thing of the past, but I don't think there's any guarantee of that. Now, the reason I say that is that people are not always going to be able to get as much warning as they got with Hurricane Andrew. And you could envision a scenario in some of these areas because of the congestion. The population has increased a lot faster than the infrastructure has, the roads of access and egress and so on. And you could envision a scenario where people might actually be trapped in their automobiles attempting to evacuate when the storm tide, the storm surge comes up and cuts off their evacuation. That could happen.
The impact of a disaster the size of Andrew is difficult to comprehend. Though it missed the heavy populations in Miami, its enormity is still so far beyond the experience of most of us, it overwhelms the imagination. The easiest comparisons are with Hurricane Hugo in South Carolina, a Category 4 hurricane we can all remember well. Hugo missed the city of Charleston, but devastated less populated areas to the north. Ironically, the total population of Charleston, South Carolina is just under 300,000 people. That's just about the number of people Hurricane Andrew left homeless. A scar that deep will last a lifetime.
If we need proof that early warning saves lives, we need only look back to Hurricane Andrew. South Florida's ability to evacuate quickly was put to the test. It's a test Floridians passed with flying colors. Let's hope the response is the same or better when the next one hits. As always, thank you for watching Exposure. I'm Dennis Smith.